My name is Emily, I'm 41, and I discovered my husband was cheating on me with my own sister. Before I tell you how I held her life in my hands years later and made my final decision, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Knowing there's a community of people listening really helps. It all fell apart on a sticky, late summer Sunday evening. We were at my parents' house for our weekly family dinner, a tradition that had been the bedrock of my life. Now, the memory plays out like a scene from a horror movie, one I'm forced to rewatch in slow motion. My husband, Michael, was at the head of the table, laughing at something my younger sister, Vanessa, had said. She was sparkling, the center of attention as always. And then it happened. It was so fast, so subtle, that anyone else would have missed it. He leaned in, ostensibly to hear her better over the clatter of silverware, and just for a second, his forehead rested against hers. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a friendly gesture. It was deeply, shockingly intimate. It was a silent conversation in a language I didn't speak, a shared world that I was suddenly, brutally locked out of. In that single, fleeting moment, a 6-year marriage and a lifetime of sisterhood didn't just crack, they shattered into a million pieces. A wave of ice-cold water washed over me, the kind that makes the hairs on your arms stand up and your breath catch in your throat. They thought I didn't see. They were so confident in their secrecy. But I saw everything. I sat there, a perfect porcelain doll of a wife, smiling as I passed the bowl of mashed potatoes to my father. Inside, a tectonic shift was tearing my world apart. As I drove home alone later that night, the streetlights blurring through my unshed tears, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were bone-white. We had a weekend trip planned, a little anniversary getaway to a cabin in the mountains. A trip I had been looking forward to for months. And I knew then, with a certainty that chilled me to the marrow, that it wouldn't be a vacation. It wouldn't be a celebration. It would be a judgment. To understand how a life can unravel so quickly, you need to go back a few months. Vanessa had just gone through a spectacularly messy breakup and had moved back into my parents' house. She was, by her own account, a complete wreck. Heartbroken, jobless, her future uncertain. And my heart, the big sister heart that had been conditioned to protect her my entire life, went out to her completely. I remembered when she was 7 and I was 11, she'd borrowed our mom's pearl necklace for show and tell and lost it. I knew I'd be grounded for a month, but I took the blame without hesitation because I couldn't bear to see her cry. That was our dynamic. I was the shield, and she was the one who needed shielding. So, when she came to me with her resume, I didn't hesitate. I spent hours with her at my kitchen table, rewriting descriptions, coaching her on how to answer tough interview questions. You have to project confidence, even if you don't feel it, I told her, genuinely wanting her to succeed. Michael, my husband, was a senior manager at a large logistics firm, a place known for good benefits and a competitive salary. Over dinner one night, watching Vanessa sigh dramatically about her prospects, he offered to help. I can get your resume to the right person, he said, giving her a reassuring smile. It's a solid company. No promises, but I'll see what I can do. A promotion from what you were doing before is definitely possible if you work hard. I felt a surge of gratitude. This is what family does, I thought. We form a circle and lift each other up when one of us falls. Vanessa, with Michael's recommendation, got the job. At first, it was everything I'd hoped for. She was brilliant at her new role, full of energy and purpose. She'd come over for dinner a couple of times a week, and the three of us would sit around the table. She and Michael would talk animatedly about work, about office politics, about a manager they both disliked. They developed a shorthand, a collection of inside jokes that I wasn't privy to. I'd feel a little flicker of exclusion, but I'd push it down. I was just happy she was happy. It was a blind spot I would come to regret with every fiber of my being. But then, the small things started. Little cuts that you don't realize are bleeding until it's too late. I'd come home from my job as an office administrator, a job I enjoyed but which was far less demanding than theirs, and the atmosphere in our house would feel off. One Tuesday afternoon, I walked into our bedroom to grab a sweater and stopped dead. The duvet on our bed, which I had made perfectly that morning, was rumpled. A single pillow was indented, as if a head had recently been resting on it. It wasn't Michael's side. "Hey," I called out. "Were you in the bedroom earlier?" "Nope, haven't been upstairs all day," he shouted back from his office downstairs, his voice casual. Too casual. I smoothed the duvet, my heart thumping a little too fast, telling myself I was being paranoid, ridiculous. A week later, Vanessa offered to stay at our house to wait for a furniture delivery while I was at work. "I can get some cleaning done for you, sis. Just relax," she chirped over the phone. When I came home, the house was immaculate, but that same strange feeling was there. A faint, sweet scent of perfume that wasn't mine lingered in the hallway near our bedroom. That night, as I was changing the sheets, I found it. A single strand of long, blonde hair, Vanessa's exact shade of bleached blonde, a stark contrast to my own dark brown, was caught in the fabric of Michael's pillowcase. I held it in my palm, the damning evidence feeling like a hot coal. I walked into the living room and held it out to him. "Can you explain this?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. He glanced at it and had the audacity to chuckle. "Wow, you're really playing detective, huh?" It probably came off her sweater when she hugged me goodbye. "You're getting worked up over nothing. Seriously, you need to relax." He turned it back on me, making me feel like I was the crazy one. Gaslighting, I would later learn the term for it. The dread in my stomach was no longer a knot, it was a living, breathing monster. The late nights they were finishing a project together. The way their phones would light up with texts from each other at all hours. The way they'd fall silent the moment I walked into a room. This wasn't in my head. And the foundation for this betrayal had been laid years ago, in the soil of my own childhood home. My parents, Linda and Robert, had always treated us differently. Vanessa was the fragile, beautiful one who needed protection. I was the strong, responsible one who could handle anything. My college fund was a constant source of stress, something I had to supplement with 2 part-time jobs. But when Vanessa wanted a new car for her 21st birthday, they co-signed the loan without blinking, putting a strain on their own finances. "Your sister needs a reliable car to be safe, Emily," my mother had explained, as if my safety was a secondary concern. They saw me as a pillar. They had no idea that even pillars can crumble. The 2-hour drive to the cabin felt like a funeral procession. Michael tried to make small talk, pointing out the fiery colors of the autumn leaves, completely oblivious to the winter that had descended on my soul. I responded in monosyllables, my stomach a pit of acid. The cabin was exactly as it looked in the pictures, a cozy, rustic haven nestled among towering pine trees, with a wide deck overlooking a glassy, serene lake. It felt like a sacrilege to bring the ugliness of our lives into such a peaceful place. That night, after a dinner that was so tense I could barely swallow, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. We sat at the small wooden table, the silence between us thick and heavy. "I saw you," I said, my voice quiet but clear, cutting through the silence like a shard of glass. He looked up from his plate, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Saw me what, honey?" "At Mom and Dad's dinner. With Vanessa." I held his gaze. The forehead touch. It was like a switch flipped. The color drained from his face, leaving his skin pasty and gray. It was the first honest reaction I'd seen from him in months. "Emily, that was nothing. You know how she is, she's very demonstrative. We were just joking around." "Stop lying to me, Michael," I said, leaning forward. My voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "I'm not stupid. I know about the late nights. I know about you being in our bedroom when I'm at work. I know you've been covering for each other. Just tell me the truth." He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, no sound coming out. His handsome face, the face I had loved for so long, crumpled. He started to cry, not quiet tears, but big, ugly, gulping sobs. The confession spilled out of him in a torrent of shame and regret. The affair had been going on for 3 months. It started with staying late at the office, then escalated to secret lunches, and then, inevitably, it had moved into our home. The room started to spin. I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. In our house? I managed to ask, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. He nodded, not looking at me, his tears dripping onto the table. One last question. The one I was terrified to ask, but had to know. Did you have sex with her in our bed, Michael? He flinched as if I had struck him. He squeezed his eyes shut and gave a small, jerky nod. Once, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Emily. God, I am so sorry. A punch to the gut. The air was sucked from my lungs. The man I had promised my life to, the sister I had raised and protected, had not only betrayed me but had desecrated the most intimate and sacred space of our marriage. I stood up, my legs trembling so badly I thought they would give out. I walked into the bedroom, the room that was no longer a sanctuary but a crime scene. I grabbed my overnight bag, threw my things inside, and walked back out to the living room. He was still at the table, his head in his hands, sobbing. I walked right past him, opened the front door, and stepped out into the cold mountain air. I didn't say another word. I just left him there with the ruins of our life. The divorce process began the moment I got back to the city. At first, Michael was a mess of guilt and self-loathing. He left dozens of voicemails, sent floods of texts. You can have the house, the savings, whatever you want, he'd plead. I don't deserve any of it. I just want you to forgive me. I ignored them all. I told him any communication had to go through my new lawyer. But then, the poison of Vanessa's influence began to seep into the proceedings. Less than 2 weeks later, my lawyer called me. His tone was grim. Emily, there's been a change. Michael has retained new counsel. He's rescinding his offer. He's demanding the house be sold and all assets, including his retirement funds, be split exactly down the middle. I knew, with absolute certainty, that this wasn't Michael. This was Vanessa, whispering in his ear, protecting her new investment. Her greed was officially stronger than his guilt. The true cruelty, however, was yet to come. One evening, I was numbly scrolling through Facebook, a masochistic ritual I couldn't seem to stop. And then I saw it. A new post from Vanessa. It was a photo of her and Michael, sitting on a park bench, beaming. His arm was wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and she was looking up at him with an expression of pure adoration. It was a perfectly staged shot. And she had tagged me in it. The caption read, "Feeling so loved." It was a declaration of war. A deliberate, calculated act of cruelty designed to inflict maximum pain. I threw my phone against the wall, and it clattered to the floor. I was shaking with a rage so profound it scared me. In that moment of pure desperation, I did the one thing I thought I could still do. I called my mom. A part of me, the naive little girl who still lived inside me, believed that a mother's love would prevail. That she would be horrified by her younger daughter's actions. I was wrong. Emily, she said, after I choked up the story between sobs, her voice laced with a weary disappointment that was aimed squarely at me. You need to be the bigger person here. This is obviously very serious between them. Michael made his choice. Your sister deserves to be happy, too. Your sister deserves to be happy, too. The words echoed in the sudden, ringing silence. My happiness, my pain, my years of loyalty, they were irrelevant. I wasn't her daughter who had been profoundly betrayed by her husband and her sister. I was simply an obstacle to Vanessa's happiness. An inconvenience. That was the moment the grief died and something else was born. It was cold and hard and sharp as steel. It was resolve. I didn't scream or cry. I simply said, "Okay," and hung up the phone. I sat there for a minute in the dark. Then I picked up my phone, opened my contacts list, and methodically, one by one, I deleted and blocked their numbers. Michael. Vanessa. My mother. My father. The next day, I called a realtor. I packed 3 suitcases, put my golden retriever, Buddy, in the passenger seat, and I drove. I drove north for 16 hours, away from the life that had been a lie, to Minneapolis, Minnesota. A city where I knew no one, where no one knew me. I was going to disappear from their lives so completely it would be as if I had never existed at all. The first Minnesota winter was as brutal as everyone warned. The cold seeped into my bones, a perfect match for the chill in my soul. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood and a temp job that barely paid the bills. The loneliness was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that threatened to smother me. Some days, just convincing myself to take Buddy for a walk felt like a monumental achievement. But I had made a promise to myself on that long drive north, I would not let them break me. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I found a therapist, a kind, no-nonsense woman named Dr. Anya Sharma. Her office was a calm, safe space where I could finally unpack the years of hurt without judgment. I told her everything, from the lost pearl necklace to the forehead touch. She listened, and then she gave me the tools to rebuild my life from the ground up. She taught me about setting boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as fences to protect the sacred ground of my own well-being. Emily, she told me during one pivotal session, her words landing with the force of a revelation. You need to grieve the family you wished you had, not the one you actually got. And you do not owe your abusers anything. Not your time, not your energy, and certainly not your forgiveness. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself when you are ready, not an obligation you owe to those who hurt you. That idea lit a fire in me. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my own life. I started small. I took Buddy on long walks around the city's chain of lakes. I joined a pottery class, finding a strange solace in shaping clay, in creating something beautiful from a formless lump. I was slowly, painstakingly, building a new Emily. About a year after my move, there was a knock on my apartment door. It was a Saturday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, and my blood ran cold. It was Michael. He looked like a ghost. He'd lost a significant amount of weight, his expensive suit hung off his frame, and there were dark, hollowed-out circles under his eyes. My first instinct was primal, hide. Pretend I wasn't home. But then Dr. Sharma's words echoed in my mind. You do not owe them your energy. I took a deep breath, slid the security chain into place, and opened the door a few inches. Emily, he said, his voice hoarse and desperate. Thank God. I had to find you. I need to talk to you. There's nothing left for us to talk about, Michael, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. The trembling girl who had fled in the night was gone. She cheated on me, he blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. Vanessa. Can you believe it? She was cheating on me the whole time. With some senior VP from her office. I found the texts. It was all a lie. I just looked at him, at this broken man on my doorstep. I didn't feel the surge of triumph I might have expected. I just felt tired. A profound, soul-deep weariness. This was the pathetic, predictable end to their sordid story. She kicked me out, he continued, starting to cry. She said I was holding her back. After everything I did for her, for us. She told me to come find you. She said you were probably miserable and alone and that you'd take me back in a heartbeat. A dry, mirthless laugh escaped my lips. They still didn't get it. After all this time, they still saw me as the doormat, the forgiving, weak Emily who would clean up their mess. That sounds like a you problem, Michael, not a me problem, I said, my voice flat and final. My life here has nothing to do with you or with her. I'm genuinely sorry you're hurting, but you chose this path. You both did." I saw the last flicker of manipulative hope die in his eyes. He finally understood. The person he was looking for didn't live here anymore. "Goodbye, Michael," I said, and with a quiet click, I closed the door, sliding the deadbolt home. The sound was so definitive. It was the sound of a chapter finally, truly, ending. That was the first day I felt genuinely free. Life after that began to blossom in ways I never imagined. A few months later, at a local farmer's market, I was buying apples when I literally bumped into a man, sending his bag of tomatoes spilling across the pavement. That man was James. He was a chef and the co-owner of a popular farm-to-table restaurant with his twin brother. He was kind, he was funny, and when he smiled, his eyes crinkled at the corners in a way that made my heart feel safe. He didn't try to fix my broken pieces, he just loved me, scars and all. He introduced me to his family, a boisterous, loving Italian-American clan who argued loudly over Sunday dinners and hugged fiercely. They welcomed me with open arms, showing me what a real family felt like, a circle of unwavering support, not a twisted ladder of pain. We fell in love. 2 years later, we were married in a small ceremony in his parents' backyard. For more years passed in a blur of domestic bliss. They were the most peaceful, ordinary, and beautiful years of my life. Michael and my old family were ghosts, hazy figures from a story that felt like it had happened to someone else. James and I had 2 sons, Liam, who was 6, and Noah, who was 2. My life was full to bursting. I had a job I loved as the manager of a small art gallery, a husband who adored me, and 2 beautiful, noisy boys who were my entire world. The custody of our life was simple, we were an equal partnership, a team in everything. And then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, as I was unloading the dishwasher, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but some strange instinct made me answer. "Is this Emily?" a woman's voice asked. A voice I hadn't heard in 8 years. It was my mother. It sounded thin, brittle, and frayed with age. I couldn't speak. The silence stretched. "Emily, please," she begged, her voice cracking with a sob. "It's Vanessa. Emily, she's dying." The words didn't make sense. It was like she was speaking a language I no longer understood. I stood frozen in my sunny kitchen, watching my sons happily build a tower of blocks on the floor, and the world tilted violently on its axis. The past I had buried 6 feet deep had just clawed its way out of the grave. "Her kidneys have failed completely," my mother wept into the phone. "Years of heavy drinking," the doctors said. "She's on dialysis, but it's not working. She needs a transplant to live. We've all been tested. Your father, me, none of us are a match. The doctors said a full sibling is her best, her only hope. Emily, you're her only hope." I stood there, clutching the phone, my knuckles white. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice a dead monotone. "They need you to get tested," she pleaded, her voice desperate. "Please, Emily. Whatever happened in the past, she's your sister. Your blood." I looked at my boys, their innocent faces full of light and laughter. This was my blood now. This was my family. "I'll think about it," I said, and I hung up the phone. I told James everything that night. He didn't offer advice. He just pulled me into his arms and held me while I shook. "Whatever you decide to do, or not do," he said, kissing my forehead, "I am with you. 100%. You owe them nothing." His simple, unwavering support was the anchor I desperately needed. Out of a strange, detached sense of morbid curiosity, I went to a lab the next day and got tested. A week later, a coordinator from the National Transplant Registry called. My heart hammered against my ribs as she spoke. I was, in her words, an ideal candidate. A 6-antigen match. A perfect match. When I relayed the news to my parents, they were ecstatic. They saw it as a foregone conclusion. Of course I would do it. I was the responsible one. The good daughter. The forgiving sister. They arranged for me to fly out the following week. I booked my own ticket and a room at a hotel near the hospital. I told them I was coming alone. This was a final piece of business I had to handle myself. The hospital smelled of floor wax, bleach, and fear. My parents met me in the main lobby. 8 years had not been kind to them. They looked stooped, smaller, beaten down by life. My father reached for a hug, but I took a small step back, and his arms fell to his sides. My mother was already crying, whispering thank you over and over again. They led me to a private family waiting room outside the intensive care unit. 2 doctors, a surgeon and a nephrologist, came in to speak with me. They were professional, clinical. They explained the procedure, the risks to my own health, the long and painful recovery time. It was a major, invasive surgery. We have to be clear, the surgeon said, this is a significant donation. And given your sister's fragile state, we cannot permit a long or stressful conversation. I met his gaze and nodded. I understand completely, I said. But before I sign any consent forms, I need to speak to my family. Just for 5 minutes. With you present. They exchanged a look but agreed. My father held the door open for me. Vanessa was in the bed, looking like a porcelain doll that had been shattered and poorly glued back together. She was shockingly frail, her skin a pale, waxy yellow. Wires and tubes snaked from her arms, connecting her to a symphony of beeping machines. She saw me, and her eyes, the same eyes that had looked at my husband with such love, filled with tears. Emily, she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. My mother rushed forward, grabbing my hand. Oh, Emily, thank you for coming. We knew you would. You always had such a good heart. My father chimed in, his voice thick with emotion. Your sister is so sorry for everything, Emily. This can be a new start for us. We can be a family again. I let them talk, their desperate, manipulative words washing over me. The hope in the room was a tangible thing, thick and cloying. They were all looking at me, the savior, the prodigal daughter returned to forgive and forget. I gently pulled my hand from my mother's grasp and walked to the side of the bed. I looked down at Vanessa, then at my parents, then back at Vanessa. The doctors told me, I began, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the beeping of the machines. That I am a perfect match. They said that, essentially, I am the only person in the world who can save you. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. My mother let out a small sob of pure, unadulterated joy. Vanessa, with a surge of adrenaline, tried to reach for my hand. I let her papery thin fingers brush against mine for a split second, and then I pulled my hand away. I looked directly into her eyes. And I'm not going to do it. The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the air and hope out of the room. The 3 of them stared at me, their faces frozen in identical masks of slack-jawed disbelief. What? My father finally stammered, his voice a hoarse croak. I turned my gaze to him. This isn't revenge, I said, my voice as calm and flat as a frozen lake. This is a consequence. Years ago, all of you made your choices. You, I said, looking at Vanessa, chose to betray my trust and destroy my marriage in my own home. And you, I said, turning to my parents, chose to support her. You chose to justify her actions and to tell me that my pain didn't matter. You all taught me a very hard, very necessary lesson, that I was on my own. I looked back at Vanessa, whose face was now contorted in a mask of dawning horror. I spent 8 years rebuilding my life from the rubble you all left behind. I have a husband who respects and loves me. I have 2 beautiful sons who are my entire world. I have peace. Donating a part of my body to you would be like willingly allowing the poison that I fought so hard to expel back into my life. It would be letting you have a piece of me, forever tethering me to you. And I refuse. Tears were streaming down Vanessa's face now, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of shock and impotent rage. You can't do this, my mother shrieked, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. You're killing your own sister. No, I said, turning to face her fully, my voice unwavering. Her choices and her lifestyle led her to this bed. My choices led me to my family, to my happiness. And today, I am choosing them. I am choosing my peace. I am choosing myself. Without another glance at them, I turned and walked toward the door where the two stunned doctors were standing. Thank you for your time, I said to them, my voice polite. My decision is final. I walked out of that room, out of that hospital, and out of their lives forever. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I just walked. And with every step, I felt the last of the heavy chains that had bound me to them for a lifetime fall away and shatter on the polished floor behind me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but I feel it's an important one. I have to ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? There's no right or wrong answer, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like and subscribe for more true stories. You're not alone.